Welcome to Chapter 13 tutorial on nerves of steel and the nervous system. The neuron is the basic functional unit of the nervous system. The neuron consists of a cell body right here, which we call sometimes a soma, neuron soma, cell body, same thing. See, it has a nucleus, as most cells do. And then also it consists of dendrites, these branched little things here, like crazy Medusa hair, right? Dendrites carry impulses toward the cell body. That is their job, to carry impulses from another neuron towards the cell body of this neuron. The combining form for dendrite or dendrites is dendro. As we move further along past the cell body, we carry that impulse from or away from the cell body towards the synapse. Okay? This is called the axon. That is the job of the axon, to carry impulses away from the cell body. The combining form for axon is axo. We'll learn more about myelin in a later part of the lecture. Now, as we come down here to where the end, the terminal spot, okay, this is where the synapse is. We're going to take and we're just going to blow that up, okay? This area, the gap, is the space between two neurons, or between a neuron and a receptor, and it is called the synapse. The combining form for synapse is synapso or synapto. So this is where the nerve impulse is carried. They don't touch each other. There are chemical messengers that are sent out across from one to the other that tells that next neuron what's happening. Now, in addition to neurons in the nervous system, there are cells that take care of the neurons. This is the neuron right here, and just like it's like a little baby, it still needs help. It needs to be taken care of. So there are support staff that take care of that neuron specifically. These are called neuroglial cells or glial cells. They are the supportive cells of the nervous system. They consist of oligodendrocytes, microglial cells, astrocytes. Those are three that we're going to talk about today. Glial cells consist of the following. When we look at, let's start here. When we talk about neuroglial or glial cells, we say glio means glue. So these are kind of the cells that help keep the nervous tissue together. Okay, they are the support staff. They keep everything running in the house as needed. Okay, glio, glue. Glial cells consist of the following. We have astrocytes, and if you look here, down here is an astrocyte. This astrocyte looks kind of like a star. That's what astro means. It's a star shaped site, okay, or cell. All right. It covers capillaries that run through the brain, and it performs the job of protecting the brain from things that run in the blood, such as toxins or waste products that might damage or affect your neurons. Microglial cells, right here and here and here, they are small phagocytic cells. So phago means to eat. Cytic or cyte is a cell, so it's a cell that eats. So basically, these cells eat bad things that surround or waste products. They take care of all the things that don't belong in this area. So that's what the microglial cells do. Oligodendrocytes, okay, oligo means few. Oligo, if we remember, that means few. Dendro, we just learned, means dendrocyte. dendrite, and cyte means cell, so it's got few dendrites basically. Yeah, see, it doesn't have very many appendages coming from it. Alright. The job of an oligodendrocyte is to form myelin. And myelin basically is what helps insulate the axon. And when you insulate an axon, impulses move much quicker through the body of an axon that is insulated than one that is not. This is something you will learn more about in anatomy and physiology. The central nervous system. Central nervous system is made up of two things, the brain and the spinal cord. So here's our brain, and here's the spinal cord. Brain, the combining form for brain is encephalo. And the combining form for spinal cord is myelo. And those are the two things that make up the central nervous system. See, they're central to the body. They run down the middle of the body. Everything that is in blue here is what we would call the peripheral nervous system. These are all nerves that run throughout the body, and they come off at some point from the brain or from the spinal cord, and we call those peripheral. So central, peripheral. So, as we see these things running out here, these peripheral nerves, okay? A nerve is one or more bundles of impulse-carrying fibers. So we take those neurons, and they have really long axons, right? And a bunch of those axons put together become a nerve, alright? The nerve is one or more bundles of impulse-carrying fibers. One or more bundles of impulse-carrying fibers that connect the CNS to other parts of the body. Neuri, or neuro, equals nerve or nerve tissue. So, alright. A ganglion is this knot-like mass of neurons located outside the CNS. So they're not located in the brain or the spinal cord. They are outside that area. It is the ganglion. The combining forms are ganglio or gangliano. Okay. I'll show you a picture of a ganglion in a horse. So here we have the horse. This is the central nervous system here. This is its brain, and this is the spinal cord. And we can see a yellow line running through this. And that's just one axon of possibly some kind of nerve, or axon of just a neuron. Alright? Well, it exits outside that nerve, alright? And we have right here a ganglion. So a knot-like mass of neurons located outside the CNS. So it's not in the spinal cord, so now it went peripheral because it exited, and now we have a ganglion here, and there's also one that has to travel all the way up here, another ganglion. Okay. Alright. A plexus is the next thing we'll talk about. A plexus is a network of intersecting nerves. So plexo is the term that the combining form we use for plexus. This little tiny picture, which I blew up for you over here, it's actually of a horse leg too, and it shows all these nerves right here. These are all these yellow things are nerves, and you can see how it just gets like to be this intersection right here. This is the brachial plexus in the front limb of the horse. So it's kind of right underneath their armpit, alright, their front limb, and you have all these intersecting nerves, which we call a plexus. Alright, meninges. The meninges are a three-layered membrane that surrounds the CNS. So we know the CNS to be the brain and the spinal cord. The combining form for meninges, alright, these are these protective layer membranes, right, surrounding the CNS, are meningio, meningio. Alright. The three layers of the meninges include the duromata, the arachnoid membrane, and the piumata. Duro is the combining form, which means tough. When you actually physically feel this, when you're in anatomy for the first time, it is literally a tough layer, okay? And the arachnoid membrane, or layer, is arachno, meaning spider. It really looks kind of like a cobweb spider layer that's underneath. When you peel off the duromata, you can see like this spidery layer underneath there. And then the piumata is so tight to the brain that you can barely see it. It's like when you try and take a pin and you stick it underneath your skin, and you can do it without breaking blood. You know, remember back in the day when you tried to freak people out? Well, that's the same thing. The piumata is that close to the brain. It's very soft, and it's directly on top of the brain. So here's a human, and we took the skull, and we took a little section, and we're looking at it. So here's the skull, and we're looking at the duromata, runs along and encases the brain, and then the arachnoid layer is this like spidery, spongy stuff, and then the piumata lies right on top of the brain. This is the brain that we're looking at, all this stuff. You can see that there's different colors here. This color is a little bit more white, and this color is a little bit more light, darkerish pink. Okay. When we talk about gray matter and white matter in the brain, gray matter is unmyelinated axons, and white matter has myelinated axons. And one of your terms is polio, which means white. Alright, and that's what they're referring to when they say polio, white matter. Alright, so here we have the spinal cord now. Okay, this is a vertebra. Okay, we all have vertebrae that protect our spinal cord, and then we have these spongy discs here, vertebral discs, that help our body to move and flex, so we're not a stiff rod down our back, right? Surrounding our spinal cord that runs through these vertebra are these three layers still. We have the piumata, which is directly on top of the spinal cord, and then the next layer is the arachnoid, or the spidery layer, and then we have the duromata, which is the tough layer. Okay? So piumata, arachnoid, and the duromata. So the brain. The brain is this enlarged, highly developed portion of the CNS that lies in the skull, in the main site of the nervous control of the body, right? And all the functions of the body. Again, the term that we use for brain is encephalo, right? And when we looked back, if we look back, remembering that the skull is what contains the brain, okay? The cranium is the portion of the skull that encases the brain. So crânio is the term we use for skull. So brain is encephalo, and to pertain to the skull, we say crânio. These are not mean the same thing, do they? They mean two different things. So do not confuse these two things. Okay? Crânio does not equal brain. Crânio equals skull. So we divide the brain into three divisions. We have the cerebrum. The combining form for cerebrum is cerebro. And then we have back here this little brown type looking ball, which is called the cerebellum. The combining form for cerebellum, which is it has the second largest part of that coordinates muscle activity. Cerebello is the combining form for cerebellum. It's very interesting that when animals, there are certain diseases that will cause hypoplasia. You might have to look that one up. So hypo meaning decreased, plasia, growth. Okay. When you have hypoplasia of something that's supposed to control a lot of muscle activity, imagine what that would look like. if you didn't have a lot of control over your muscles. They would be very uncoordinated. In your, if you were to open this up into the PowerPoint into a slideshow and then click on this, this shows cats, I believe cats or dogs that have had hypoplasia of their cerebellum, and what that would look like, and how disjointed and how awkward it is for them to walk and move. And then we'd have down here this creamy colored area, which is the brainstem. And the brainstem connects your right and left half of your brain, your hemispheres, with the spinal cord. Okay, and this out here as we move along is the spinal cord. And this is where the basic supports the basic functions of life, right? Just a very important structure. Alright, let's talk a little bit about terminology. Okay, so pathology terminology. We've got concusso, which means shaken together, so you can think about concussion, right? It's something we hear every day almost every day when we're watching sports on the weekend. Contusio. Contusio is a combining form for bruise. So you've had a contusion. You can have brain contusions too, okay? Bleeding in your brain. Idio means individual. Paresis, meaning weakness. Plegia, meaning paralysis. Para means hind or lower end. So if you're a paraplegic, it means you have paralysis of the hind or lower portion of your body. Paraplegic. Okay? If you're a quadriplegic, that means that you have the inability to use all 4 of your limbs, right? Thinking about, he's far gone now, but Superman back in the day, Christopher Reeves, became a quadriplegic after a horse injury. He was jumping over and he got his hands tangled in his horse's reins and he went over and broke his neck. So he became a quadriplegic. Aesthesia, alright, sensation or feeling. So if you are under anesthesia, meaning without sensation or feeling, which is good for the animals who are having painful procedures done, like taking out their ovaries and their uterus, right? We would want that animal to have no sensation or feeling or consciousness. Prolapse, ptosis, so prolapse or drooping, okay? That's what ptosis means. So here is some nervous system terminology. Alright, got ataxia, which means without coordination. Ataxic means you're stumbling. Alright, so anytime you see an animal who's stumbling around like they're drunk, that means they are ataxic, is a term you can use. Contusion, alright, again, bruise. Encephalitis. So thinking back to our combining forms, right? Brain, meaning encephalo, right? So itis is always inflammation, so inflammation of the brain, encephalitis. Hydrocephalus, right? Hydro is actually water, right? Cephalus means water on the brain, so if you've ever seen animals or humans who've had hydrocephalus, they have this very enlarged frontal prominence of their brain, or they have a large skull and head, okay? Hydrocephalus. Myelitis. So itis, inflammation. Myelo was, if you remember what myelo was, spinal cord. So inflammation of the spinal cord. Neuralgia has to do with nerve pain. So algia is pain, neuro. So pain of the nerve. Analgesia. So gesia, again, pain. An is without, so without pain. We already talked about anesthesia. A seizure is a sudden involuntary contraction of some muscles caused by a brain disturbance. Convulsion is another term that we use to talk about seizures. Syncope is a fancy term for fainting. And then we have paralysis, which is a loss of voluntary movement or immobility. I'm also going to write down nystagmus down here. which we will talk about this probably in the next chapter 14, but nystagmus. The eyes make a repetitive, uncontrolled movement, often resulting in a reduced vision. So these movements are involuntary, and they can occur from side to side. They can go up and down, or they can sometimes go in this circular pattern. So most of the time, it's very interesting when we see nystagmus. It's like the animal is like looking. It's how you feel when you've had too much to drink and you feel like the room is spinning. That's exactly how the eyes move. They move from one side to the other. They kind of do this jerk motion. Alright, here are some abbreviations that some we've already talked about and some that you will come across in your terminology of learning about animals and reporting back, things that you're doing. So it's part of the central nervous system, CNS, PNS. We said peripheral nervous system. When we talk about the mood or attitude of an animal, we can say they are bright, alert, responsive. We call that BAR. QAR is quiet, alert, responsive. CSF is cerebrospinal fluid. IT is intrathecal. This has to do with giving medications into the spinal cord. So if you were giving an animal an epidural, you'd be going, that anesthetic would be going into the animal's, it would be intrathecal, alright, into their spinal cord. Under the spinal cord space, not into the actual spinal cord. Alright, that would be bad. Okay, and that's chapter 13.